Today's video is very different than most of my videos because I'm not in my studio. I'm in my garden, which is where you can find me when I'm not weaving, spinning, or knitting. And while I love to grow food and pollinator-friendly flowers, lately I've been thinking about how I can incorporate homegrown and foraged natural dyes and fibers into my fiber arts practice. I'm Pamela from the Fiber Sprite, and welcome to my garden. I never really thought I'd get interested in spinning flax, much less growing it, but then I moved to coastal North Carolina. We have hot, humid summers and pretty mild winters. While there is still a use for all the wool sweaters I spun and knitted while living in Colorado, more and more of the time, I find myself reaching for a plant fiber garment. I already like to garden, so why not try and grow my own? Flax, the plant used to make linen fabric, has been intertwined with human history for millennia. The oldest known use of wild flax dates to 30,000 years ago in the Upper Paleolithic era, and it was in a cave in what is now the Republic of Georgia. Flax became domesticated as a crop probably around 9,000 years ago in what is now Syria and Turkey, and along different timescales in other parts of the world. In addition to being a really valuable source of fiber, flax has seeds that are nutritious, and they're high in omega-3s, and the seeds can be used to make an egg substitute, which is great if you're vegan or have an egg allergy or eggs are just too expensive. Flax seeds are also high in oil, and linseed oil that is produced from them is the oldest known commercial oil. It's used in oil paintings as well as many natural wood finishes. So this is not just a superfood, but a super fiber, and really one of the ultimate plants. Flax was widely cultivated in Europe, and it's supposed to be pretty easy to grow. I have a hard time with gardening advice that just says stick it in the ground and watch it grow, because that's not helpful. When you've got a plant that's not behaving the way that everybody says it will, it makes you wonder, is there something about the soil that was wrong, or the light, or the water? There are so many variables that affect plant growth, and there's always a getting to know you stage with any new plant in the garden. So I really wanted to get to know flax. Last year, I tried to plant flax for the first time, and it was an epic fail. First of all, I waited too long to sow the seeds. After talking to Cindy Connor, who's the author of Homegrown Flax and Cotton, I learned that her rule of thumb is flax goes in with the peas and cotton goes in with the tomatoes. But by the time I learned that, it was late March and closer to tomato planting time than anything. I knew I wasn't guaranteed success, but I decided to try it anyways. Well, while my germination rate was pretty good, I didn't sow the seeds anywhere near as thickly as they needed to be sown. Flax is not technically a grass, it's a flowering plant, but it sort of looks like a grass with its long and slender stalks. And if you think of how grass seed is put down in a pretty thick and even layer so that you get a luscious green carpet of grass, that's about right for flax that's grown for fiber. Now, I sowed a variety that was called Nathalie, and it was supposed to be a good and tall one for fiber production, but mine only grew to about 18 inches. As if that weren't enough, when I tried to ret it after harvesting, that's the process that you do so fiber is easier to extract, it didn't ret. And every time I checked it, it wasn't ready. And then all of a sudden, it was completely over-retted. And all of the fibers just kind of crumbled apart and made a huge mess. I later talked to Cindy Connor again, and she said, it's always better to under-ret your flax. You can never undo the retting process. So if you think you're getting close, but you're not sure, you just take it inside, you dry it out, and then when you're ready to process it, that's when you might do the final retting stage. This is all that I ended up with. It's really not that much. So as you can see, I had a learning opportunity, but this was not the easy stick it in the ground and watch it grow promise that I thought it was going to be. But instead of giving up, I wanted to see if there were other things I could do to make my flax a success. The first thing was to buy more seed so that I could start again. I bought 2 new varieties. One is avian flax, And the second is a cool season flax variety called Lenore. I knew that I had planted my first crop way too late, but I also wondered if it had gotten too hot too soon. Since a lot of the flax that is still grown in the world is grown pretty far north of where I live, I decided to plant the cold season variety in late October and see what happened. Now it's the end of March and I am spinning here in front of my Lenore flax bed. It is nowhere near perfect. There are some holes in it where the feral cat who's adopted me likes to take a nap, and it's not as tall still as I would hope. It's at least double the size of my Nathalie flax that was my first experiment that didn't do so well. It's in full flower now, and the books are telling me that I can expect to harvest it in about another month. Now, that puts the growing season length at almost 200 days from sowing, which is double the expected 100 to 110 days. Even though that's a really long time, it gave me some really pretty greenery in the garden in the cooler months when most other things are dormant. After I harvest the flax, the flowers that are dormant in this bed are things like zinnias and cosmos, and those will be ready to start growing after I've harvested the flax. And so I'll have had some really beautiful year-round interest in this bed. If I choose to do this again next year, I'll need to find another spot to grow the flax because crop rotation is important. It is a heavy feeder, but so far I'm pretty happy with this experiment. Well before it was time to harvest, I still wanted to run another flax growing experiment with the whole flax goes in with the peas idea that I got from Cindy Connor. I have a dear friend whose mother always planted her peas on Valentine's Day, but that was many years ago before climate change started accelerating. So instead of planting on Valentine's Day, I planted on MLK Day, which is about 3 weeks ahead of Valentine's Day. The variety this time is avian flax. You can see my peas are over here and the flax is over here, and we'll just see if there's enough cool weather to let the avian variety get nice and tall before it gets too hot and dry. I'm also wondering about water. These are raised beds, and that's where I did my first flax experiment. And flax really has pretty shallow roots, and unlike some of the other things that I grow in my raised beds, which have really deep tap roots, the flax might actually need to be watered. So my bias as a gardener is to choose things that don't need to be watered because I find that to be more sustainable, even though I live in a place that has abundant rainfall. And so I try to choose things that are going to thrive in my climate without having supplemental watering. I'll water a little bit to get a plant started, especially if I'm transplanting or growing it from seed. But I'm wondering particularly about the flax, the avian flax in the raised bed, and whether or not it's going to want more water than it's getting. And so I'm going to experiment with that a little bit as well. It's so easy to get discouraged when your projects don't quite work out. But over the years, what I've learned is that even when these experiments fail, they have the seed of your next step. For me, that was the planting season, but in your garden, that might be something else entirely. Natural fibers have so much to offer us in terms of comfort and sustainability, and if we all think about how we can contribute to a healthier planet, starting with our own backyards and what grows there, we can work to restore the connection to the earth that seems so tenuous these days. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.